There was a woman who believed that love could fix anything. She believed that if she stayed, if she gave enough, if she forgave enough times, the darkness inside him would one day turn into light. She thought her warmth could melt his cold silence, that her patience could teach him tenderness. But love does not always heal. Sometimes it hides the wounds until they become too deep to close. She met him when her world was still bright. She laughed easily, then she dreamed loudly. She thought forever was a promise people kept. He told her she was different. He told her she made him feel alive. She believed every word because her heart wanted to. She built her world around him, brick by fragile brick, and with each day she gave a little more of herself until the woman she used to be began to fade quietly into the shadows of who he wanted her to become. At first it was beautiful, the kind of love that makes the air feel lighter, that turns ordinary moments into poetry. But then came the silences, the unspoken disappointments, the nights when she cried quietly beside him because he had stopped seeing her the way he once did. She told herself it was just a phase, that love was meant to be hard, that people who truly care find their way back. She didn't know that sometimes love leaves even when the body stays. He began to change in small invisible ways. His words became sharper, his eyes colder. She started to measure her days in apologies she never owed and nights spent trying to remember what happiness once felt like. She smiled so he wouldn't leave. She stayed so he wouldn't forget her. She forgave because she believed that's what love does, until forgiveness became a wound that never healed. She stopped telling her friends how lonely she was because they would never understand how someone could feel so alone while being loved. She told herself this was loyalty, this was devotion, this was what good women do. She forgot that she too deserved softness. She forgot that she too was meant to be loved gently. There were mornings when she looked in the mirror and didn't recognize the woman staring back. Her eyes, once filled with light, now carried the quiet ache of someone who had loved too deeply for too long. She learned how to hide her sadness behind the makeup she wore, how to speak softly so her pain wouldn't echo. She thought love meant endurance, that the more she gave the more it would come back, but all it did was take. One evening he told her he needed space. She nodded, even though she had already given him all the space inside her heart. He left, and the silence he left behind was louder than any argument could have been. She waited for his message, she waited for his call. Days turned into weeks, and the truth began to settle like dust on everything she owned. He was gone, and he wasn't coming back. She cried for months, not because he left, but because she stayed for so long with someone who never chose her the way she chose him. She cried for the woman she was before she met him, the one who believed love was safe. She cried for every time she said sorry just to keep peace that was never hers to hold. She cried until her heart became quiet, until the love that broke her began to fade into something softer, something almost peaceful. And one morning she woke up and realized she hadn't thought of him in days. She made her coffee the way she liked it. She opened the curtains and let the light in. She sat with herself, and for the first time in years she didn't feel empty. She felt free, not healed, not whole, just free, and that was enough. She learned that love isn't about how much you can lose of yourself to keep someone else, it's about how much you can still love yourself when they're gone. She learned that some people aren't meant to stay, they're meant to teach, and some lessons come dressed as heartbreak. She learned that strength doesn't always roar, sometimes it whispers in the quiet act of letting go. The woman who once believed love could fix anything finally understood that love was never meant to break her, it was meant to make her see who she truly was. Even in her pain she found beauty, even in her ending she found peace. She didn't hate him, she didn't regret him, she just closed that chapter gently and walked away. And maybe somewhere out there he still remembers her, the way she looked at him like he was everything he wasn't, but she no longer waits for that. Maybe because she finally realized she was never broken, she was just loving too much in a world that didn't know what to do with a heart like hers. Time passed softly, like the slow unraveling of a dream. She had lived for too long. The world outside kept moving, people laughed, the seasons changed, but inside her something stayed still, as if her heart was waiting for permission to breathe again. She didn't hate him, she didn't love him anymore either. She just existed somewhere between the memories that hurt and the silence that healed. There were nights she still reached for him in her sleep, and mornings when she woke up and felt that empty space beside her, like a ghost of everything she used to believe in. But the tears no longer came like storms, they came like quiet rain, washing away what little remained of the ache she once thought she'd never survive. She started to understand that healing isn't loud, it doesn't come with grand moments or sudden clarity, it comes slowly, like sunlight finding its way through broken blinds. She began doing small things again, things she had forgotten made her feel alive. She painted her nails, she went on long walks without checking her phone, she played old songs not to remember him but to remember herself. She started talking to people again, smiling again, even laughing sometimes, and though the sound felt strange at first, it didn't hurt anymore, it felt like a promise. Sometimes healing looked like loneliness, sometimes it looked like strength. She stopped asking why it ended and started asking what it taught her. She realized she had been trying to fix someone who didn't want to be fixed. She had been searching for love in a place where she was only meant to learn how to let go. She stopped chasing closure and began creating peace. There was a day she stood by the window watching the rain, and she whispered to herself, I forgive you not because you deserve it, but because I deserve to be free. She forgave him, she forgave herself, she forgave the girl who stayed too long and the woman who finally walked away. She learned that forgiveness isn't forgetting, it's remembering, without bleeding. Months turned into a year and the world began to feel lighter. She started writing letters she never sent, talking to the sky like it could listen. She planted flowers in her garden, and each time they bloomed she saw herself in them, fragile but alive, broken but growing. And one day she met someone new, not in a way that felt like lightning, but in a way that felt like sunrise, slow, gentle and real. He didn't try to fix her, he simply sat beside her in silence until she remembered what safety felt like. He didn't promise forever, he promised presence, and that was enough. She told him the truth, she told him she once loved until it broke her. He smiled and said, maybe love isn't meant to break us, maybe it's meant to rebuild us. She didn't know if it would last, and for the first time that didn't scare her. She had learned that love isn't about holding on, it's about not losing yourself when you finally let go. And so she lived quietly, not in a perfect story but in a real one. She laughed again, she dreamed again, and when she looked at herself in the mirror she saw not the woman who was broken but the woman who survived, and somewhere deep inside her heart whispered thank you, not to him but to herself, because she had finally learned that love doesn't always look like what we imagined. Sometimes it looks like walking away, sometimes it looks like starting over, and sometimes it looks like standing alone and still feeling whole. Years passed quietly like soft footsteps fading down a hallway. She no longer counted time by heartbreaks or seasons, she counted it by mornings. She woke up at peace. She lived alone but never lonely. Her home smelled of coffee and books and quiet music. She had built a life from the pieces once shattered, a life that didn't need to be loud to feel full. She still thought of him, sometimes not with anger, not with longing, just a distant tenderness, like a song she once knew every word to but could no longer remember the melody. She realized healing doesn't mean forgetting, it means remembering without wishing it had been different. There were moments when she'd find old photographs tucked between the pages of forgotten journals, his face smiling, hers too, and she would smile back at them, those two people who once believed forever was a promise. They were just children in love with the idea of saving each other. She didn't blame them, she just whispered a quiet thank you for the lessons they left behind. She had learned that love wasn't about losing yourself to someone else, it was about finding someone who reminds you of who you already are. She learned that silence can be sacred, that peace doesn't always come with answers, and that sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is simply not look back. There was a night when she sat under the stars, her hair a little grayer, her eyes softer. She spoke to the sky the way she used to talk to him, and she said, I hope you found what you were looking for, I hope you're happy. It wasn't a wish of pain, it was a release, because she finally understood that love didn't fail, it just finished. And in that moment she realized something beautiful. She had once believed love could fix anything, and maybe it did, just not in the way she expected. It didn't fix him, it fixed her. It taught her where her strength lived, it showed her how far her heart could bend before it broke and still find the courage to beat again. People often asked her if she was afraid to love again. She smiled and said, no, I just love differently now. I love without losing myself, I love without fear, I love without needing it to last forever, because I know even if it ends it can still be beautiful. She met people she cared for deeply, some stayed, some didn't, but she no longer searched for the kind of love that burned. She wanted the kind that felt like breathing. She learned that real love doesn't ask you to shrink, it asks you to stay true to who you are. And one morning she stood before the mirror, the same mirror where once she couldn't meet her own eyes, and she whispered to her reflection, you did it, you survived. She smiled, not the way she used to smile for someone else, but the way a woman smiles when she finally belongs to herself. The woman who loved until it broke her had become the woman who healed until she became whole, and though her story began in heartbreak, it ended in peace, because she learned the truth. Love was never supposed to destroy, it was meant to awaken, and it did. And somewhere out there someone might still remember her the way she once loved, completely, wildly, without fear, but what they'll never know is that in the end she didn't need anyone to remember her, she remembered herself, and that was enough. There came a time when she stopped telling the story of how it ended and began telling the story of how she began again, because somewhere between the breaking and the healing she found the quiet kind of happiness that doesn't need an audience. She stopped waiting for closure from others and learned that sometimes closure is a conversation you have with your own heart. She started to see beauty in small things again, the sound of rain on the window, the warmth of sunlight across her hands, the laughter of strangers in a cafe. She used to think joy had to be loud, now she knew it could whisper. She learned that peace doesn't come when life gets easier, it comes when you stop needing it to be. Sometimes she'd catch her reflection and remember the girl who used to beg to be seen, who mistook pain for passion, who stayed when she should have walked away, and she would smile not out of pity but out of love, because that girl had courage, she had faith, even when it hurt, she had hope even when it broke her, and that hope became the reason the woman she is now exists. There were still days when the past would visit uninvited, when an old song would play or a familiar scent would pass her by, and for a moment it would all come rushing back, but the ache didn't stay long anymore. She had made peace with her ghosts. She had learned that memories don't have to hurt to matter. She spent her evenings writing letters she never sent to all the versions of herself, the girl who believed love could save him, the woman who cried herself to sleep, the survivor who got up again and again and again. She thanked each of them because they all kept her alive in their own way. And sometimes when she looked at the night sky, she thought of all the people who had broken and rebuilt themselves over and over again. She felt connected to them like invisible threads of shared strength tying hearts that refused to stop beating. She whispered, "May we all learn to love ourselves the way we once loved others." She had become something rare, a woman who no longer needed to be chosen to feel worthy. She didn't chase love anymore, she attracted it in the way she carried herself, in the peace she radiated, in the softness that came after the storm. She was no longer the woman who loved until it broke her. She was the woman who learned love doesn't have to hurt to be real. And if someone ever asked her what she learned from it all, she would say this: that love is not meant to be survived, it is meant to be lived. That letting go isn't losing, it's remembering without pain. That sometimes the most beautiful endings are the ones that lead you back to yourself. And so her story didn't end with heartbreak or reunion. It ended with her standing quietly in the sunlight, smiling at nothing in particular. Finally whole. Finally home.